Now, the second review of Kenya's 38-month lending program from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, is complete. And the review follows the latest approval by the IMF board in April this year of a $2.34 billion US dollars facility to finance Kenya as support of the next phase of a fighting COVID-19 pandemic. IMF had already set tough conditions for the money that it had lent to Kenyan government in the form of broader streamlined reform and governance agenda, specifically in the fight of corruption, as well as making sure that state-owned enterprises were performing. Kenya has already undertaken some of the reforms with the announcement that promotions in the civil service have been stopped for 2 financial years, state universities closing some of their satellite campuses, as well as key institutions like Kenya Power and KEMS are going through major reforms. Now, the Ministry of the National Planning, through a statement by the CS, Ukur Yatani, indicated how within the 3-year lending program, they had made sure that they had set structural benchmarks to transform the fiscal governance in state-owned enterprises, improving anti-corruption measures, and strengthening of public accountability in procurement. Let's look at then that trend of our borrowing from IMF, and you will see that we started in January, then we went down a bit, and then that spiked heavily in June all the way to July as well. We're still relying heavily on IMF as well. If you go back to 2020 as well, you will see indeed that our reliance from IMF has been increasing, our external debt also jumping. We do know the levels as well, and that has been a conversation that we've been having here on a Business AM. Rufus, let me begin with you. We do know that IMF gives us money, but then it comes with a lot of structural conditions that we have to put in place in the country now. Some of them, we've already seen them, Rufus. This over-reliance to IMF all the way from 2020, does it go to show Kenya's, I would say, that Kenya is desperate then for this help from IMF? Because if you go back to Mwai Kibaki's government, we don't really rely so much on IMF, but during Uhuru Kenyatta's government, and especially in 2020, we've reaped heavily from IMF.
So I'll say that it's a situation where we really need the support of the IMF. And to be honest, these guys have been coming through. They have helped us through this situation. I remember the other day when we were looking for vaccines, we did not have sufficient funds to secure vaccines. But with the help of IMF, we have been able to secure a good number of vaccines. And hopefully, we are going to get more funding to boost us through recovery. So sometimes deficit spending is taken as a negative, but if you look at modern monetary theory and see how other economies are doing, you notice that a majority of them are going into deficit spending. So it's not an evil thing, it's quite normal. Basically helps advance more funds and stimulate to an expansionary economy. So if we get this money and implement it well, then over the short run, we are going to start seeing the fruits of this money. However, during this period when we are getting the loans, might be scary, but when this money is implemented well within the economy, we will start seeing production. A good example is with Thika Road. We saw the expansion. The economy was very much strained when it was being constructed, but right now we're already seeing the fruits of the investment. So with the majority of our infrastructure projects that we are investing in, we might not see the fruits right now, but over the longer run, we might start seeing some good fruits from the projects. Yes. So yes, we need these loans, and I believe they will be beneficial in helping us through the path to recovery.
Yes. Justin, let me rope you in on that. Something that Rufus is shying away from mentioning, the radical reforms that follow IMF giving you a facility, because they have to look at exactly the way in which you're running your country and then demand that reform. And that's what Ukur Yatani is mentioning here, that they've within a 3-year program, they've shown IMF that indeed they can turn around the way the country is run. Number one, anti-corruption measures, they've roped them up, that's what he's saying. And number two, turning around some of the state-run institutions in the country and the general functions of the government. Justin, there's not going to be promotions again in the country for the next 1 or 2 years. That's what we do know now. But the question should be, our over-reliance on IMF, which comes with a lot of sanctions within the economy, is that something good or bad now for us, Justin?
Thanks, Simba. You cannot possibly say something economically like this is purely good or purely bad.
Yes.
So for someone to come into your house and ask you to tighten your belt or eat a certain way, and for you to accept as the house owner and the one who owns all that food, it means there's probably a reason why you're even willing to accept in the first place. So that's the point number one. We do need this money. We're in a period of time whereby we need to recover as an economy. We need to help, and this is the most basic of things, just improve the health of the nation by vaccination. So we need that money. We need that money to also spend, albeit at a lower level,
yes,
on infrastructural projects, which are going to boost, again, the economy. So we do need money. The second thing is, where do we get this money? Is it from the commercial markets, or do we go the concessional way whereby we're getting loans from IMF? Commercial markets, one of the options is, for example, a Eurobond. Something like a Eurobond whose interest rates and even repayments, leave alone interest rates, repayments, are based on the currency performance, and we're seeing how our currency is going right now. This is not the best option. The interest rates or the loan rates you get also from some of these commercial markets is a bit higher than what we're getting from IMF. So I need money. I have a place where I'm going to get it in a more I will say in a less stringent manner.
Yes.
And someone who's telling me that my repayment in a way can be negotiated such that it's dependent on the income or the revenue I'm raising as a government. So where will I go? For up to that point, it's an easy decision. I need money. There's somewhere where I can get it in less stricter, on the face of it terms. Now, IMF knows that it cannot just give out money and say that's the end of it. It needs to see how this money is going to be repaid. So then it becomes a matter of sacrifice. For Kenya now, is it going to accept all these conditions to tighten their belt and lessen their expenditure, especially on SOEs, as you've mentioned? Or is it going to just go the commercial markets way, accept higher interest rates, accept the risk of the higher currency risk, and also possibility of, not now, but later when they're paying the principal payments, it will be such a huge amount of money they have to pay, they need to borrow more. They'll be more desperate then. So it's forcing the government to do one thing that they have always avoided, which is just lessen the expenditure a bit. For the revenue we collect, we spend too much. So this is forcing our hand in that. And at the long term, it's a good thing. Short term, we will feel the pinch.
Pretty much. Gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you very much to you, Justin Mwangi, and Boniface Kamau, for joining us this morning for this proper conversation on our economic review. And that's how we end. Good morning.